Hello again, everybody. So yesterday we began controlling the intensity of our color. The intensity refers to the brightness or the dullness of a hue, of a color. So yesterday we started by mixing together tones. When you add a gray to a color, you're mixing a tone, and so you're doling down the color when you're creating these tones. So in this case, I have my pure hue, which is red, and I started adding gray to it. And when I started adding gray to my red, I got all these tones of this red. So all these colors here are toned down version of this pure hue right here. So that is just one way in which I can create, or which I can control the intensity of my color. Today, we're going to do a second way of controlling the intensity, and without using without using black or white. The second way is by mixing a color with its complementary color. So, complementary. A complementary color is a color that is the opposite of another color. And so for today's exercise, we're going to need to use our color wheel for this, and I'm going to show you exactly what this means. So complementary are colors that are across each other on the color wheel. So colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. Okay, so by mixing together a hue with gray, you are toning it down. You're doling down the intensity of that color by mixing its tones using gray. That's one way you can control the intensity of a color. A second way to control the intensity of a hue is by mixing that hue with its complementary color, the color that is across from it on the color wheel. So I'm going to continue using the same hue that I've been using. In my case, I'm going to continue to use red. So I need to know, well, what is the color that's across from it on the color wheel? What is red's complementary color? To do this, we're going to need to turn to the page in which we did our color wheel on, so that we can start to learn how to use the color wheel as a tool for color mixing, for color harmony, for color schemes. So let's go ahead and turn our page in our sketchbook. And I want to take a look at the color wheel. So what are complementary colors? Complementary colors are colors across from each other on the color wheel. In my case, I've been using the hue red. So what is the color that's across from it on the color wheel? So if I go over here and I go directly across on the color wheel, I see that the secondary color green is the primary color red's complementary color. So red and green are complementary colors. Now, what does that really mean? Complementary colors are completely different from each other. They have nothing in common. So red is a primary, so I can't mix any other colors to get it. Green is a secondary, so I needed to mix two primaries to get my secondary color. In the case of green, I needed to mix together blue and yellow, and that made green. Red doesn't have any blue in it. Red doesn't have any yellow in it. It's a primary color. So green has nothing in common with red. It's totally different. It's like comparing black and white. They don't have anything in common. So they're polar opposites. They're totally different. So when we're trying to mix the neutral, when we're trying to tone down a color and we're trying to control the intensity, we learned yesterday you can mix gray with that color to tone down the intensity. To get gray, I need to mix together black and white. So if red and green are polar opposites, it's kind of like mixing together black and white. They end up canceling each other out. They tone each other down, and they kind of balance out. For my exercise today, I'm going to be mixing together red and green. What other complementary colors on the color wheel? If you're using blue, blue's complement is orange. So if you've been using the hue blue, you are going to mix it together with orange. If you've been using yellow, your complementary color is the secondary color violet. So those are other samples of complementary colors. Red and green, Christmas colors. Blue and orange, Bronco colors. Yellow and violet, Laker colors. So go ahead and turn back to the page where your intensity scales are at. And we are going to continue adding 2 more rows of intensity scales for me using the color red. So what I need to do here is I need to put down my hue that I've been using. In this case, I've been using red, so I want to make sure there's some red on my palette. I actually also want to make sure that I have a little bit of white. So I'm going to put some white on my palette. Now, red's complementary color is green. So to get green, I need to mix together yellow and blue. All right. 3 primary colors and my white on my palette. And so what I'm going to start by doing is I'm actually going to mix together a pretty solid secondary color. Now red is the primary hue that I'm going to be using for my color scale. So the opposite, it's complementary color. The opposite of it is going to be green. So that's the secondary color I'm going to mix. So I'm going to mix some of this blue into my yellow, and because I'm mixing dark into light. And I'm going to start by mixing this mixing this secondary color. Now this secondary color, I want to make sure that it's a pretty solid secondary color. So in this case, I want to make sure that it's a green-green. I don't want it to be too blue. I don't want it to be too yellow. I want it to be green. Okay, so if you're mixing together orange, you want it to be too red. You don't want it to be yellow. You want it to be a pretty in-between solid orange. Okay, so I feel that that's a pretty decent green color. Just make sure it's pretty mixed up. I'm going to scrape my brush along the edges. All right. So I have my red and my green right there. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start knocking back the intensity of the red by mixing a little bit of green into it. So the red is the hue that the pure here that I want to create. So I'm going to put that pure color right here at the top. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding a little bit of green, a little bit of green, a little bit of green, and I'm going to start back knocking that intensity going down. So I'm going to just go ahead and take a scoop of it, add it into the red, stir it up, okay, and lay that color right next to it. It's pretty much the same color right now. Again, we want to gradually change it, but if I feel that it's not making a big change, then I can be a little bit more generous about how much color, about how much of that complementary I'm kicking in there. So see, it's not knocking it back too quick. So I'm going to be really generous about how much of this green I'm adding in. Okay. In fact, you know what? Maybe I'm going to scoop some of this red off to the side just to lessen the qualities here, or the amounts. All right. See how this does. There we go. All right. So now it's really starting to knock back the color a little bit. Take another scoop of that green, add it into the well. Stir, 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 stir. Put that color down. Take a nice heaping amount of that color. Stir, 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 stir. Okay. Take another good heaping amount of that green, add it into the pot. Okay. Another heaping amount. Mix it in there. Okay, and I started to run out of my green. All right, so there we go. I've knocked back the intensity of my color. But what did you see started happening once you mixed a complementary and you had pretty equal parts of your complementaries together? It should have started turning more of a brown color. So when we mix two complementary colors together, we end up getting brown. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you how you can mix together your complementaries with white and get gray. So what I'm going to do here is I already have some red on there, so I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of yellow, and that way I can mix together red's complement, which is green. I'm going to just take some blue, mix it, dark into light, dark, 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 dark. Now I want to make sure that I'm getting and mixing a pretty solid green. Not too yellow, not too blue. If you're mixing orange, make sure it's not too red, not too yellow, and it's a pretty good pumpkin orange. All right. Pretty happy with that. All right, I'm gonna wash off my brush. Dry it off, paper towel. All right, now to get a green, you can mix your two complementary colors and some white, and you can get a grayish color. It's pretty much equal parts. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some of my red, some of this red, and I'm going to start to add some green in it. Mix, mix, mix. And so you really want to knock back the intensity of the red, and you want it to turn into a good neutral color, a good neutral brown in this case. Still pretty red. That might be a pretty good color. Maybe a little bit more green. So once you get them pretty well mixed, and it's kind of a neutral color, it's not leaning towards any color too much. I'm going to actually mix that with my white, just a little bit at a time. Oops, there's probably a little bit too much red in it because it came out. Too much green in it because it came out a little bit yellow. So I'm going to just put a little bit of red in there. Stir it up, and I'm going to try to get a gray. Now, it's not going to be like a black and white gray. Oops. I put too much red. I meant to dip it in the green, into this brown mixture, and I dipped it into the red. Probably need a little bit more white. There we go. All right. Still a little bit green. I'm going to just add a little bit. Oops, probably too much red. A little bit of red, knock back the intensity. A little bit more white. Do the blue. Until I get a pretty decent grayish color. Like I said, it's not going to be a gray that's, you know, a little bit. It's not going to be like a black and white gray. It's going to be a little bit warmer because it has that red in it. Okay, so it is a different feeling. Now what I've done is I've actually taken a little bit more blue in there and knocked back and balanced that out to make the gray that I'm kind of looking for. So now I can mix it just like I did my intensities yesterday, but using this mixture as my gray instead. So if I'm using my pure red, I want to take that, sorry, here's my palette. Rinse off my brush, dry it off. So here's the gray that I mixed today. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and actually lay that down for you. I'll lay it down here on the bottom. And what I want to do is I want to start adding a little bit of red to that at a time. So take more red, mix it up in there, stir, 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 stir. Lay that color down. Okay. Take a little bit more of that pure red, mix it into my gray. Stir, 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 stir. Lay that color down. A little bit more of my red. Stir, 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 stir. And lay that color down. More of my red into there. Stir it up. More red in there. Stir, 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 stir. Mixing it up. Red in there. Stir, 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 stir. There we go. And there we go. So now in this one, this last column, what I did is I mixed together a grayish color by mixing together green with my red and adding a bunch of white. Then what I did is I used that as my base gray, and I started to add a little bit of pure red into that gray at a time, changing the intensity. So you can, we have two different ways you can knock back the intensity of a color. You can use it by mixing a color with gray to create a tone, or you can mix a color with its complementary color, which is the color that's across each other from the color wheel, and that the opposites are going to tone down the brightness of one of those hues. Okay, so I have two ways in which I can control the intensity, and again, adding to the variety of that pure hue that I started with at the beginning, adding more variety of color by mixing it with colors that are available to us on the color wheel.